Yeah, so, in this Marvel and DC universe, it's the kid's superpower, right?
Right.
But you have to, as the teacher, ask curious questions and probe them. And then when they start to come up with some really good answers, then you go, ah. So you take that and then you can kind of transition that sometimes into curriculum.
Welcome, my friends, to the Teacher's Lounge, where the coffee is strong, the ideas are buzzing, and the conversation is even stronger. I'm your host, Mik Love, and we're here to discuss how culture, created in the classroom or the boardroom, can elevate us all. I have some fantastic guests that will join me in having this conversation, and I look forward to it. So sit back, relax, and grab your favorite beverage, because this riveting conversation is one you don't want to miss. My father spent a long time working in the alternative school setting, setting the stage for the differentiation in learning. And when I think about that, I think about your efforts. And we were having this conversation around voice. Talk to me about why voice is so important.
Taking it back to, I am the older sister, so my education experience was a little bit different. It was still very industrialized. You come, you're being told what to do, not much of a voice, not much of a choice about how you can steer your education. And so having an educator in a household like our father, he instilled that in us. And so then how can we transform that into some of the places that we have been? And so similar to you, I'm a visual learner. Yeah. So when it is very difficult when you can't bring concepts together because you just can't visualize the connection. And so one of the things that I have had the pleasure of doing is being able to be in places and spaces that now I get to navigate that or spearhead that. A lot of the work that I did, I think the biggest aha moment is when I was trained by the Buck Institute of Education, which is now PBL Works, on project-based learning. And it just really dawned on me. It started years and years ago. That was started back in Montessori, when Montessori schools were established, and giving students the opportunity to have the freedom to be free thinkers. And so when I was trained, I said, how can I translate this into not only my classroom, but into the workplace?
Voice is trying to help them find out why I'm angry. What are my antecedents or triggers? Now, how can I solve them and do them in a different way? So, brain research teaches you when kids are at a really heightened emotional state, it's not time to talk to them, right? Yeah. So I do what my therapist wife tells me, do some walk and talks with them. So maybe for the first 90 seconds, we're not even talking. We're just walking, and we're in a really nice area where you can hear birds chirping and things like that. And then you just kind of see the blood pressure go down, their shoulders kind of go down. And then, to use Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey's term, what happened to you? Rather than why did you do that? What happened? And then they will often unpack, and it's usually not the teacher. It could be something that happened at home. It could be something that's still aching them from a class before. Right? But you have to kind of teach them to unpack that. But sometimes you have to give them space before you give them the opportunity to use their voice.
I love that. And so when I think about alternative education, I think that's what everything is, right? Everything is alternative education. We should be meeting the needs of our students, like you said earlier, meeting them where they are. Now my question to you is, you're both leaders, and you've been leaders whether you were in the classroom or you're leading the boardroom. How do you get that transformational leadership idea of voice to now apply to those you lead?
So I'll start with students. You have to be intentional, because many students will come into your classroom with compliance as their mode of learning. I want to sit quietly. Don't ask me anything. I won't answer anything. I will take notes. And then I'll spit back at the time of the assessment or the test. But to be intentional with voice can start with something as small as, let's like a daily this or that. You come into my classroom, okay, class, and it can be in a restorative setting, pizza or tacos.
Tacos.
Right? So when you start using food as a driver, then you're going to quickly get kids to choose a side and be, fervent about, no, it's tacos. Not just Tuesday, but blah, 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 blah. Right? So that could be really small, but that's kind of getting the toe in the door of kids saying what they like, what they don't like, picking a side. And for educators, I'm almost 20 years out of the classroom, so I'm evaluating educators more than actually teaching. You just really have to foment when I go in and observe, hey, little tidbits, little suggestions. Hey, why not let the students lead some of this? So you have to actually put it into your lesson planning, or the teachers will do all the work. They will just be the sage on the stage from bell to bell.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. How about you?
Well, as I mentioned before, I'm all about the mental model shared vision. And so in the leadership perspective, in the situation that I'm in now, I think if we all can collectively have a voice, and once we establish that shared vision, then that is really our framework for how we do all things moving forward. That really makes us think about our values, it makes us think about our program models, our strategic plan. All of that is coming from a shared vision. And so as a result, when in the classroom, and I too haven't been in the classroom since 2016, but having been a national trainer for educators and then overseeing some of the curriculum and training of educators, I see that it's still very difficult for them to have a voice, because how they were taught and what they were taught is more so structured. Sometimes it's very difficult for an educator to go outside that box.
Yeah.
And so also those who do go out the box, is there a consequence? Have they faced a consequence? And so they'd be more apt to not have a voice. And so getting them to be that for their students, it is a challenge, but it's worth it. That's where that freedom comes in. It's where you meet them where they are. And again, with the alternative setting, you're talking about students, but then what about your educators as well, too?